Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ottawa City Council meeting for Wednesday, the 28th of September, 2016.
Meeting on the 28th of September, 2016. For those who are able to, could you please rise for a moment of personal reflection and remain standing for the national anthem. If you could remain standing as we ask Councillor Taylor to introduce our very special guests who are here to sing our national anthem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, colleagues. I present to you the Northwest One Choir, organized for us today by Janine Jennings and under the leadership of Mary Ann Dunn, an established choir director of 25 years. In 2011, the Social Committee of the Northwest One apartment complex expressed their desire to have a residence choir which would perform at annual Christmas events. With only 11 members and no official director, it was a rather tentative effort for that first year. However, they persisted and grew in numbers, worked hard, and with the addition of some professional musicians in their midst, now enough confidence to branch out. Last year, in addition to their Christmas program, they performed a concert of War and Peace music for Remembrance Day. It was so well received by the residents of their two buildings that they are repeating the event again this year. They have performed the Christmas program for some Old Forge clients and have been asked to present their current War and Remembrance program at an upcoming Sunday night light event in Bell's Corners. It's now an honor for them to perform here our national anthem for City Council and for us today. The Monday morning practices are a great way to start the week, they tell me, and they look forward to them. It's fun, relaxed time, but keeps their minds sharp and working. Ladies and gentlemen, the Northwest One Choir.
Well, thank you very much to the choir from Northwest One. I'm one of your neighbors down the street. It's very nice to have you here at City Hall. Merci d'accepter notre invitation.
Thank you for having accepted our invitation this morning.
To invite Joe Nicastro to the podium for this council meeting's Mayor's City Builder Award. Mr. Nicastro and Mr. Nicastro's councillor Riley Brockington to join us as well. J'invite aussi son conseiller Riley Brockington.
I also invite his Councillor Roddy Brockington.
And friends, your wife and kids, and the former mayor of Nepean, Mary Pitt, is with us. Thank you, Mary, for being with us. And Maria Ricci, who nominated you. Randy Hansen is representing the Honourable Bob Shirelli, who very much wanted to be here, but as you know, the legislature is sitting today. Highly respected in his community for his business acumen as well as his community involvement, Mr. Nicastro has worked actively to improve the quality of life for generations of new Canadians. As a longtime entrepreneur, Mr. Nicastro owns several locations of Nicastro Fine Foods across the city. Entrepreneur de longue date.
As a longtime entrepreneur, Mr. Nicastro owns several locations of Nicastro Fine Foods across the city.
Locations employ many residents, but due to Mr. Nicastro's leadership, they are community hubs which support and foster many local associations, organizations, and charities. He has served as the board of director member at Villa Marconi, where he led the capital campaign, bringing the vision of a local Italian-Canadian long-term care center to fruition. And anyone who's gone to the wonderful Villa Marconi knows what a beautiful, caring place it is, and thanks to Mr. Nicastro and his team who helped to raise funds for that important cause. He even still finds time to be a volunteer committee member at Villa Marconi to improve the lives of all the residents of that wonderful facility.
He even still finds time to be a volunteer committee member at Villa Marconi in order to improve the lives of all residents there.
Mr. Nicastro has helped to found both the Circolo Recreativo Cleto and the Milan Club of Ottawa, while supporting St. Anthony's Church and numerous other local community associations and charities. Mr. Nicastro has truly managed to help build the local economy with an international sensibility. These many efforts have made significant contributions to the social, cultural, and recreation fabric of our city.
His many efforts have made significant contributions to the social, cultural, and recreational fabric of our city.
Ottawa City Council, it's my pleasure to present you on behalf of my colleague, Councillor Brockington, and all members of Council, the Mayor's City Builder Award for doing such great work in our community. We're really proud of you, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Come on out. We'll just take a picture here.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you to be here. Mayor Jimmy Watson and Councillor Riley Brockington, thank you for this wonderful honor. I'm very grateful to be recognized for my contribution in making Ottawa a better place. Ottawa has been giving me so much over the last 50 years, and it has been my pleasure to give it back. I continue to be committed to this wonderful city and look forward to the years to come. I like to thank all the persons to nominate me. Thank you very much. Merci. Grazie.
Thank you very much. Grazie.
It's great to have somebody in your family.
Thank you.
And again, thank you to Mr. Nicastro, his family and friends. It's great to have you here. I should remind members of the public and members of council, today is the launch of our One Young World conference. This is an international conference that is bringing together 1,300 business, young leaders in business, labor, arts, science, engineering. And if you do see some of the delegates in and about the community, go up and introduce yourselves. Thank the volunteers. We have hundreds of volunteers. And I invite all members of council and members of the public to the opening ceremony tonight, which is taking place at 6 o'clock on Parliament Hill. It's free of charge. The Prime Minister will be speaking. and there'll be a number of other international well-known figures that will be commenting, and you'll see this parade of flags where there's, I believe, 196 countries represented. So I want to thank Ottawa Tourism. They're spearheading this particular international conference, and we're very proud and honored to have it here. There are over 200 members of the international media, so it's a great opportunity to showcase our city on the eve, really, of 2017. Alors, c'est une occasion pour tous les membres du Conseil et aussi...
It's an opportunity for all members of council as well as the public to participate in the opening ceremony this evening at 6 p.m. It's free. The Prime Minister will be there to speak, and other members of the community that are responsible for One Young World. It's an opportunity for us to say thank you to all the volunteers and all those who will be participating. Appel nominal, Madame la greffière adjointe, s'il vous plaît.
Present.
Councillor Middick. Councillor Harder. Here. Councillor Wilkinson. Present. Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Kadri.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Here.
Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans. Here. Councillor Tierney. Conseiller Fleury.
Ici.
Councillor Nussbaum. Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Chernyshenko.
Present.
Conseiller Cloutier.
Present.
Conseiller Blais. Councillor DeRuse.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Kakish.
Present.
Councillor Hubley.
Present.
Mayor Watson.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Vous avez le quorum.
Confirmation, adoption de procès verbaux, confirmation of minutes 14,
Confirmation of
2016. Carried. Declarations of interest, including those originally arising from prior meetings. Déclaration de conflit d'intérêt.
declarations of conflicts of interest. Aucune.
Presented. Regrets. We have regrets from Councillors Middick, Nussbaum, and Tierney, advising us they'd be absent from the City Council meeting of the 28th of September 2016. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation d'un rapport.
Motion to introduce report.
Conseiller Cloutier, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the report from the Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation entitled Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation OCLDC 2015 Annual Report, the report from the City Clerk and Solicitor entitled Status Update, Council Inquiries and Motions for the period ending 23rd September 2016, le rapport numéro 17 du Comité des services
Protective Services, Community Protective Service Committee Report 17 and Planning Committee Report 31A be received and considered.
Carried. Adopté. Merci. Report. Community Land Development Corporation, Société d'Aménagement des Terrains Communautaires d'Ottawa. We have a presentation by the Chair, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor, thank you for chairing the corporation, and we welcome your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a few slides that will sort of outline some of the things we do, because this is a corporation of the city that we don't hear from very often. So the Community Lands Development Corporation and its Board of Directors are happy to present with you and share our annual report for 2015. The corporation was established to take parcels of city-owned land that had development potential and meet our objectives of providing a financial return to the city while meeting the social, environmental, and cultural needs of communities. The corporation consists of board and staff, as shown on the slide, and I'm happy to joined here by Gord McNair, the Secretary and Chief Operating Officer of the corporation. And as Chair, I'm proud of the accomplishments to date, and I'm pleased to present the financials in the report and audit financial statements today. So in 2015, the target was to contribute $5.5 million to the city. 2 sales were completed for a total of $5.8 million, exceeding our target by $300,000. These sales are shown on the slides. 5731 Hazeling Road. We received full asking price on this property, and it's now being developed under a community-based concept plan to deliver a seniors living community. And through a sale, a portion of the land was retained by the city, which protected the urban natural lands that are part of the Pool Creek Open Space Corridor, which serves as a connecting link through the community. For 2500 Saint Laurent Boulevard, we also achieved market value. while maintaining Council's direction to ensure development would provide employment. The proposal is for an industrial condominium development tied to concept plan that ensures high design standards. I pointed out we're also on track to generate a total of $22 million during this term of Council, and the auditor's report is confirmed that the finances of CLDC conform to accounting standards. Mr. Mayor, members of Council, our Community Lands is committed to promoting community improvements in the City of Ottawa that's based not only on the financial awards, but to contribute to the social, environmental, and cultural needs of communities. Hence, we're committed on the sale of surplus properties to achieving optimal values relating to both financial and non-financial community values. Just to give you some ideas that have happened over the last few years, we have facilitated development sites for institutional users, such as places of religion. We've promoted development of a range of residential housing types catering to changing demographics. We facilitate the development of nonprofit housing through allocating lands for this purchase, and I think some of you were out to see what's happening out in Barrhaven on that. We protected 17 hectares of natural environment area and parkland and provided parks and contributed to recreational facilities. We created environmental benefits through progressive sustainable development measures. We increased the municipal tax base. We also eliminated the carrying costs for aging and surplus city assets that were just sitting there and not creating any revenue for the city. And we promoted transit-oriented development and innovative transit traffic solutions. So we're continuing to move forward with other properties now, and when there are properties in any of your wards, we will always let you know what is going on those properties, and we do hold public consultations where required. We kind of act like a developer, but usually we don't actually do the building. We do the creation of the land to make it suitable for development purposes. So we're happy to answer any questions, and I have Gordon McNair here who can answer any that are more technically oriented.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Wilkinson and Mr. McNair. Conseiller Fleury, s'il vous plaît.
Councillor Fleury, yes, Mr. Mayor. My question is specifically on the $5.8 million that we're getting out of this. These funds, are they paid into the general fund or into a specific account?
French is kind of weak.
Oh, sorry about that. The $5.8 million that was brought in, it goes into general revenues,
That's
or
right.
it's
Yeah, it goes into general revenue. So that is the net proceeds after we pay all of our expenses. So that's the actual amount that we ended up, because we do have costs. We pay staff people. We do some studies and various things to make these ready for development. But the net amount that we did this year was 5.8, and it went into general revenue, which is helping to fund. And when we sell residential properties, 25% of that money we make there goes into the fund that is used for social housing, as you probably know, the same as any other property. We also do that too. So some of these properties were not residential properties. When we have residential properties, that money also goes towards the fund that I know you use in Ottawa Community Housing.
okay. This is more of a comment, and I do see the importance right now, based on our financial situation, to bring it into the general revenue. But I think over time we should look at potentially an endowment fund of some sort to see long-term benefits of these sales. But that's more of an open-ended comment here. Thanks.
Okay, thanks you.
Merci. Councillor McKenney, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, for that. I just had a question on a specific site. It was the Randall site, and my understanding is that that site has been on our sites for social housing for some time, that there's been some of our stakeholders have had an interest in that site for some time, and I just wonder what those conversations were, if we were or if we have just. I'm just not sure what the process is. If it's been if it's been kind of slated for social housing, then how do we balance our social component for our financial component of our mandate, I guess is what I'm asking.
What lands that the city has surplus are circulated within the city first before they are actually transferred to the Ottawa Community Lands Development. So it's actually a transfer of the asset that comes into place. That particular one, there was an interest by the church there. I met with them and met with many, and so did staff. our mandate is to get market value for properties. We're not allowed to give surpluses once they have been passed to us. So 25% of that sale did go into the fund for community housing, and I can pass it on to Mr. McNair, who had some of the discussions with the city on this before, because it was actually looked at by the city before it was passed on to us.
Okay.
Yes, just to add to what Chair Wilkinson said, in the past that specific site on Randall was held for affordable housing purposes. And then after discussions with the Affordable Housing Group, it was agreed that it wasn't an ideal development site. They had other parties in the area. So what we agreed at that time was to move forward with the potential sale of the property with the proceeds 25% going to the affordable housing. So that's where we are right now. I can't talk a lot about what's happened because it is an OCLDC matter, but we have moved through a process to sell a property. And essentially, we do have paper on it, and we're scheduled to close next year with 25% of the sale proceeds to go to affordable housing.
So just to clarify then, at what point do we involve our housing stakeholders who may have an interest in a site? And I understand that it's not the corporations that for you to provide it at a lower, less than market value. But at what point do we involve our affordable and social housing stakeholders in that discussion?
We involve them in the very early stages. As a matter of fact, what happens as far as the process, any city asset that's going to be looked at as far as potential disposal, what we do is we go through a circulation process, and housing is always circulated on that. And if they put up their hand, we have discussions with them, and we put it on hold for their particular needs. Once they waive, we then move forward to sell it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning. Thank you for your report. Are all properties that have been deemed surplus to the City of Ottawa's needs up for sale now? And if no, how do you prioritize which properties go up for sale over the others?
For the community lands, we only sell ones that are passed on to us, and they are usually the larger parcels that have more development potential, so we can create them for development. I'll let there are many other small properties throughout the city, and I'll let Gordon McNair, because he has two hats. He works for us part-time, but part-time for the city, and the community lands pays part of his salary because of the work he does for us, but he also knows the city process.
Thank you, Chair Wilkinson. Through the Mayor, basically there's two streams. We have the regular disposal process, and we have the process dealing with the Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation. An example of the normal process where we have road allowances that are going to be closed, they're non-viable, and that sort of thing. So essentially what we do in that situation, typically we go to a budding landowner to see if they're interested in selling it. And typically what we have is for budget purposes is a line of $1.5 million. That's our target for each year that we have to generate. So that's one target. The other target is the Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation target, which is $5.5 million. So if it's prime development land where we're looking to obtain objectives under our official plan, that sort of thing, and it's a viable site, typically that would go into the Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation.
So for the lands, though, under the corporation's responsibility to market and sell, are you completely marketing every property now under your responsibility?
We have a number of properties there now. We have a target for each year of this term of council. There are reports we have to do on them. We have to get not just doing property valuations, but we also sometimes have to service them. We have to ensure that any road widenings, all sorts of things go on with it. So we make sure we work on that part first, and when they're ready to go to market, and the timing of market, we go to market. And the timing of market is also determines on what's happening in the economy in the area. Some properties go more sooner than others. My background, I was in commercial realty and had a specialist. So with working with the staff who also have those credentials, we try to do the timing when it's better. And sometimes we need public meetings. Sometimes the meetings we have meetings with the local councillors to help come up with what kind of a development plan, just like a developer would. So that does take some time to do them. We have about, I think, 3 that we're working on right now for next year. They're not quite ready to go yet. And even when you have them, there always are conditions to be met and various things before they actually close and we get the funds.
Is your annual financial target $5.5 million per year every year of this term. Is it the same?
That's right. The total was $22 million. And we're looking at last term of council, we actually exceeded the amount that was we were projecting by quite a bit. And this term, we're on track to make the $22 million and possibly a bit more.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kadri, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, if I may, on the property that was for sale in Hazeldean Road. I just want to acknowledge the effort that Mr. McNair made working with my office as well as working with the future landowner about protecting some of that corridor for the Pool Creek area and not acquiring all of the land back, but some of the land back because of the protection requirements for the Pool Creek. So I want to thank you for that. And the other thing is also working with a proper land developer in terms of next use for that piece of property. And if I may add, Mr. Mayor, is the fact that the department worked very well with my office because this property was up for sale even back when Hazeldean Road was being widened. And even at that stage, we made sure that the city's needs were looked after in terms of widening of Hazeldean Road. And again, look in the interest of the city first, and then also when you do dispose of a property, you do look at that city interest on an ongoing basis. So thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Kadri. Councillor Kakish, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering if we can get a quick overview in terms of the long-term plans for the city, in terms of what we have of surplus lands and how long it will get to get rid of all those lands. How is that process assessed? Is it on an annual basis? But in terms of the mandate that you've been given to sell off the lands that we don't need, what is that looking in terms of the long-term plan?
Well, we're going to run out of land eventually, probably, but there is actually surprisingly a number of parcels that do not need to be retained for civic purposes. That's the potential. And even environmental ones, like we own a lot of environmental land. We're not touching that either. But there are lands that other municipalities held. Nepean had a large block, which we have been developing. It's mostly finished now. There's a large block in my ward that Canada had bought that we're on the preliminary working on that. So it depends what becomes available and is passed to us. And whether they're always going to have surplus lands, I have no idea. But we certainly have enough to go for some years.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to that, as was pointed out, this term of council, we definitely have enough land to hit the target of $22 million, and I can assure you that my team already is moving forward with the next term of council to have our targets in place. There is a fair amount of land. We're not concerned about moving forward and hitting our budgets for the next term of council based on the land bank that we currently have.
What can you give me a sense in terms of either years or hectares that we have? What are we talking about, 10, 15, 20 years? What is the projected timeline in terms of selling those off?
Based on the current inventory and what I know today, I would say it's at least 10 to 15 years.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you to the corporation.
Yeah, we will send council members this slide. They can take a look at it if they're interested.
Right. Yeah, and I think it really is about selling at the right time, because we're not going to obviously just sell land at a fire sales price. We want to get the best use, because those dollars come back to help affordable housing and other budget needs of the city. So I appreciate your wisdom in putting the properties out at the appropriate times. Thank you. So on the report, item 1 is received. Item 2 is carried. Thank you. Next item, the Bureau du Greffier municipal, City Clerk.
City Clerk and Solicitor.
Rapport de situation, received.
Status update, reçu.
Des comités, Committee and Protective Services Committee, rapport numéro 17 du Comité des...
Report 17, Community and Protective Services Committee.
Improvement Program, Fonds pour l'infrastructure sociale, Programme de logement social. And we have 3 recommendations. Carried. Next item is 4, Carlington Mountain Bike Park, Aire de Vélo de Montage de Parc Carlington. Hold. Okay. We'll come back to that. Planning Committee Report number 31A, rapport numéro 31A du Comité de l'urbanisme, Development Charge Complaint 300 Green Bank Road, plainte concernant 300 Chemin Green Bank. Carried. Dissent by Councillor Shirelli. You want to charge them more, is that it? 2015 Employment Lands Review, examen sur les terrains destinés à l'emploi 2015. Carried. Councillor Harder, a brief item, or should we hold it?
I don't need to hold it if no one has questions, but I do want to speak to it. Would you like me to do that now?
Anyone else want to speak to this? Councillor Harder, then?
Okay. The Employment Land Review is a tool for city building. This study started out with councillors on Planning Committee asking whether we had the right lands designated in the right places for the technology and industrial growth we hope to see in the future. In the fall of 2013, Council agreed to this review of vacant industrial lands, the first review of its kind since municipal amalgamation in 2001. The resulting report concludes that our strategy for business park development needs fine-tuning. The fact is, some of the lands that are pegged for industrial development will never be used for that purpose, but could be used for other development purposes within the existing urban boundary. Other employment lands will be developed as intended and need to be protected in our zoning bylaw and official plan. It's also clear from this study that we have to start taking a one-city, big-picture view of new business development. For too long, we have been fretting over every geographic piece of the city getting its fair share of business growth, a hangover from the days before municipal amalgamation. But we are one city, and when something good happens in a part of Ottawa, we all benefit. Instead of various parts of the city competing against one another for a shot at new business development, now is the time for a coordinated strategic look at the locations that make sense for industry and technology. The consultants recommend that the city remove the designation of certain lands as enterprise area, which are meant to be a mixture of employment and residential uses. These enterprise areas have not worked as expected and have proven confusing. This report also recommends relaxing the zoning rules for ancillary land uses within business parks. Planning Committee earlier this month gave direction to ensure that any changes in this regard do not hurt stores and restaurants that have been established nearby. In November, we will have a staff report proposing specific changes to the official plan based on the Employment Lands Review. This work is hand-in-hand with new growth projections for Ottawa for population, jobs, and housing, which will be the topic of a public meeting here at City Hall tomorrow evening. I will just add that the Employment Lands Review fulfills one of the Ontario Municipal Board's requirements to resolve the outstanding appeals to our official plan. I believe all councillors are keen to see us clearing the appeals to our updated official plan and moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. I want to thank you, Councillor Harder. I know you and staff and committee worked very hard on this, and it's very much part of our city building strategy to grow the city sensibly and with care. So I appreciate that. On the report? Carried. Social Infrastructure Fund investment in affordable housing. Carried. Our thanks to the federal government. Zoning bylaw amendment 421 Besserer Street, modification de règlement de zonage 421 rue Besserer. Committee recommendation. Carried. And then the summary of written and oral submissions. Carried. Item number 9, front-ending report design and construction of Goulburn Forest Road from Key Rock to Walden South and Walden North to Terry Fox Drive. Rapport préliminaire, conception et construction de chemin Goulburn Forest de Key Rock à Walden Sud et de Walden Nord à la promenade Terry Fox. Carried. Councillor Wilkinson, you're our resident Canada historian. Why is it called Goulburn Forest Road?
A forest road is when they did the original surveys, they did them straight lines, and the pioneers were wise. They went with the terrain, and so they forced their way through. And when those roads exist, it's only the traveled portion we own, so you have no land on each side of them. So this one is going to change its name eventually, I think, because it's no longer going to be forced when we get the new line in.
I think Councillor Chantieri has a counterpoint.
Mr. Mayor, you notice that my colleague avoided to answer you. The question is why it's called Goulburn, because they stole those land from Goulburn to create Canada.
It went from March Township to Goulburn. It was a highway.
It always goes back to March Township, a rowdy council back then. So on the report, carried. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda? On the bulk consent agenda as presented. So we'll go back to the item that was held by Councillor Brockington. This is the Carlington Mountain Bike Park, Aire de Vélo de Montagnes Park, Carlington. Councillor Brockington, you asked that we hold this. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning again. The item was debated and heard at the Community Protective Services Committee this month, an hour and 45 minutes of debate and discussion. This is, in essence, a partnership between the Ottawa Mountain Bike Association and the City of Ottawa to develop on a small portion of the Carlington Hill a mountain bike skills and pump track area. There has been significant amount of discussion and debate and comments exchanged in the community, and the committee is recommending that Council endorse this today. Since the committee meeting, and the reason why I held this today is I wanted to follow up primarily on a concern about the lands and whether or not any species were at risk from this development. Again, the development is quite small in comparison to the entire hill, but it's best to identify these issues before we make a decision. So my questions are to the GM of Parks and Recreation. There were 6 species identified that could be at risk: brown bat, tricolored bat, barn swallow, chimney swift, common nighthawk, monarch butterfly, and even the butternut tree. The area in question is on grassland, not in woods. No trees are going to be coming down, but it's important to have identified these in advance. And I wanted to get comment from staff whether the design, the development, the construction would negatively impact any of these species that I just listed or any others.
Mr. Mayor, Carlington Park is a fairly large park, and the species that the councillor has referred to largely relate to a portion of the park on the eastern edge, which has some environmental sensitivities. The proposal for the mountain bike park that we're talking about today is at the top of the hill to the west side of the park, and in identifying a location, we were quite careful to stay, first of all, to stay away from what is referred to as Carlington Woods, but also to delineate the required 30-meter buffer for the area. We have had some consultations with our colleagues over in Planning and Growth Management, which are here with me today. Perhaps they would like to comment more specifically about those species and the impact on this project.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, the species listed, it's true, are not likely to be residing on the property where the mountain bike proposal is established at, but there's a possibility that some of them may forage over the open areas of the park. That use will not be interfered with by the proposal. The airspace above the park will remain, so the species will be able to continue foraging, and we do not anticipate there to be adverse effects on the species at risk if, in fact, they are using the airspace above that part of the park.
Thank you for that. Can staff clarify just the design elements, the whole process to design the park? How engaged will the City of Ottawa be with the design, overseeing the design, monitoring the design, making sure the standards of the trail and pipe track do meet those standards and ultimately are safe?
Mr. Mayor, staff, both from my department and from Planning and Growth Management, will have close oversight of this project, much like we did with the mountain biking folks out in the South March Highlands. It will be regular contact. Every aspect of the park as it's being designed and then built and then commissioned into use will benefit from staff oversight, and we will make sure that all of the things that we've agreed to in terms of coming forward with this project are respected.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shirelli, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Following up on some of the questions from committee, I was wondering if you could tell us whether there's been any kind of assessment of the impact on the actual park of having hundreds of extra people on the hill where there won't be snow this time. Just impact on the property.
Mr. Mayor, we've looked at this from several angles. Firstly, we don't believe that this the push track and skills area will generate crowds of hundreds of people at one time. This is an interesting feature, but something that people have to bring their bikes to and to enjoy, and primarily oriented at children and youth. We hope it will be busy, but we don't foresee that this area of the park, which is relatively underused at this point, except for passive walking area, will be unduly impacted. In fact, the park itself is a premier tournament site for city baseball, has an arena and a large parking lot, which is relatively underused during the summer months and provides an ideal location for any extra traffic that is generated to the site. So we don't anticipate that this particular area of the park will be overburdened or that there will be negative impact on the rest of the use of the park. Either in the summer or in the winter, as we've mentioned before, this will have no impact on the winter use of the park, which is largely for tobogganing, sledding, those kinds of things.
Okay, during competitions, will the park generate bus traffic and extra people coming in by bus, and what will the impact of that be on the area? And do we have any assessment of what the impact of that will be on the area?
The Mountain Biking Association has not specifically identified that they would be hosting competitions there, but if that were the case, I think, and we would want to capture this in an agreement with them, that there be a transportation plan that would likely include the use of the arena parking lot for any drop-off and pickup of participants in that activity.
What about the impact for people who don't go by bus and don't go by bike? What is the impact? Has there been any assessment of the impact of on-street traffic, on-street parking resulting from this?
We have not done a traffic impact study of this. As I said, the likely additional vehicles generated to this site are not likely to be much higher than what is currently there for the existing activities in the park, whether it be wintertime sledding. It is a fairly attractive citywide feature during the winter months, and as a baseball center in the summertime, we don't anticipate a huge increase based on there being a dirt bike trail at this location.
And from the public consultation component of this, what were the 2 or 3 main comments or concerns that you received from the public?
Mr. Mayor, there were a variety of comments received. Probably categorized as loss of the passive nature of the park for those who are enjoying it currently to walk their dog or simply use it as a place to go and look over the city. There was certainly the issue of the environment that's been mentioned and any impact on species at risk. That was largely focused on the fact that the initial plan, which was much more ambitious, included features and other parts of the park, but Phase 1 has addressed that by uniquely staying away from that area. And then probably to some degree the traffic neighborhood impacts that might be occasioned by heavy use of the site.
Okay, I will listen to the questions from the other councillors and see where Councillor Brockington thinks he wants to go on this as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cheryshenko, please.
Thank you very much. Like all my colleagues, we all had a previous life before we came to council, and mine just so happened to be on the environmental impact of sports events and sports facilities. So I know that the whole mountain biking movement, if you will, or on the whole, mountain biking organizations suffered in their early days from a bit of a Yahoo reputation, and quite strikingly, worldwide got a grip on that and actually became an example of how a sport could be very much self-governing and operate far more sustainably, respect for the rights of the lands that they were on, and actually participating regularly in erosion control, in reparations to tracks, and actually in some cases ecological improvements. So I believe that OMBA, the Ottawa Mountain Bike Association, subscribes to the IMBA, International Mountain Bike Association's Leave No Trace ethic. Is that right? Are we aware of that, and have they brought that up as part of their ethic?
Mr. Mayor, we are aware, and yes, they do, and in fact, they don't only do it in words, they do it in action. We have a fairly long relationship with them at the South March Highlands, and they have been extremely good partners, not only in the designs that they've brought to that facility, but also their ongoing maintenance, education, and how they program the site in a very responsible way. So I think they have fully bought into an environmentally sensitive approach to all the work that they do, and in fact have talked about, in the case of the Carlington project, using everything they've learned in the South March Highlands to apply it to the design and operation of the park.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to confirm that. Is there a commitment then, an ongoing maintenance commitment here? Help me understand who governs and whether there is actually in any way, are there eyes and ears on this park? How is it working? Is it self-governing? Does the city continue to have a role ensuring that the proponent here fulfills their commitment?
Mr. Mayor, there's probably a few layers of this. First of all, the commitments of all parties will be captured in an agreement before any of this work starts, and one of the things that we will be doing is fleshing out the Mountain Biking Association's commitment to the construction and then the ongoing maintenance of the features. The community itself is asked to be involved in both the build and the ongoing maintenance and programming of the site, and so we will want to capture that as well as early as possible into the process. And then, of course, the city, like it does with features like skateboard parks, toboggan hills, or any other like features, we will have regular inspections carried out by city staff to make sure that any identified hazards or maintenance requirements are addressed promptly.
Thank you. Can that be, I suppose, given as direction, or was it already an intention that that would be a mandatory part of that agreement, that before such an agreement is signed, that be clear?
Mr. Mayor, it is a foundational piece of our negotiation with the mountain biking folks, so we fully intend to have them engaged not only at the beginning in building this, but for the ongoing, making sure that this remains a safe and enjoyable, innovative feature for the users.
Thank you. Final couple of questions. Loss of tree canopy. Is there any expected loss of tree canopy, need for cutting in this first phase? I'll ask questions about future phases.
Mr. Mayor, there are no trees in this area. It is a clear area of parkland that is essentially grass at this time.
Okay, which gets to my next phases. I gather there are other phases that are proposed. At this point, what is the city committing to, and what would be the process to evaluate future phases and expansion of tracks and use?
The commitment today is simply for phase one, so the push track and the skills area at the top of the hill. Should any future development of the park be desirable, required. We will evaluate, in accordance with Councillor Brockington's motion, we will evaluate between now and the fall of 2018 how this feature is going, how the Mountain Biking Association is performing in terms of a partner, and should there be a desire to move on to do any of the other features that were proposed in the initial stages, we would go back to the community for consultation, and then we would come back to the Community and Protective Services and Council for an approval of whatever other features that might be.
Thank you. I'm pleased to support this then. I know that there have been plenty of cases. We have our own experience, as you say, with other city facilities of this sort, in fact much larger, where the mountain biking community in Amba has been a very good corporate citizen would perhaps be the wrong word for it, but engaged group, and I hope this will be a case where they will demonstrate that they can be extremely responsible managers, and from what I understand, it's really incumbent on them, the onus is on them to do that, because we will all be watching carefully for future phases, and should they fail to do that, of course, we'll, I think, look less charitably on future phases. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to comment about some of the experiences in the South March Highlands, and that land, part of it is in my ward, the big part is in Eli's ward. We were doing a management plan there about 10 years ago for the natural environment lands, so these are very important environmental lands and very sensitive. And the city didn't have the funds to, in fact, do very much there. And the mountain bikers came out in droves to the meeting and said, we're in there, we're using it now, we want to continue to use it. So what the city did was, in fact, use them to create protection for the environment, which is a little bit what Chair Tashenko has just been saying. They agreed to look after the trails, to put in areas where it was wetlands. They built a number of different things, and they got the people to go off making new trails through the woods. The city designated certain highly protected areas we didn't want people going into because of the terrain in there was very sensitive for many of the creatures that are in there, and they have kept people out of there. So what they have done is they've taken and they've actually become the managers for the city in there. And they're doing in the park behind the Richcraft Center, which in Trillium Woods, they have been going in there and helping create the trail system in that area as well, so you can go out of the city's recreation facility and into this trail system. And it's been wonderful. In the summer, I have some junior rangers we hire. They've been taking youth into that and letting them understand about the environment. I don't think a lot of that would have happened properly without the work of the Mountain Bike Association, and they do police it. And we don't have parking very well for them there, but they have been very good about making sure people, we've had some discussions, and so as Councillor El Shantiri, on issues that came on that, and we've come up with a solution for that. And where the new park and ride is going in now on weekends, it'd be nice, very handy, they can go right from there into the woods. So it really is a partnership. And I think if you get this in the agreement, that you'll find that actually it's extremely beneficial in actually protecting the environment as much as it is providing a very useful outdoor activity for people's fitness, which we all want to make sure happens. So I just wanted to say it's been a good relationship, but I think Councillor El Shantiri probably would say the same thing. He's had many connections with them as well, and I really found that has been beneficial all around.
Thank you. Councillor Caudry, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just got one question. In terms of during construction, if there's any damage to the EPA lands, will the Ottawa Mountain Bikers Association be responsible for that? And if so, how are we going to get them to fix any construction damage, either to the EP lands or as well as to the rest of the area?
Mr. Mayor, first of all, the agreement that we will negotiate with them will include remediation of any damage they caused to the park in constructing this. But it's not our intent to let them anywhere near the environmental lands. The environmental lands are to the east of the park. We anticipate that the construction of this would come through the south end off of Morissette Avenue, up where the water reservoir is, and towards the back to the top of the hill. There may be incidental damage that happens along the pathway that they follow there, but that would be remediated as part of the cleanup once they are done construction. No intent to authorize any use of the environmental area as part of building this park.
So those instructions about incidental occurrences have been provided to the Ottawa Mountain Bike Association?
Yes, and it'll be included in the contract that we ultimately sign with them.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Caudry. Conseiller Fleury.
So, Mr. Mayor, just want to follow up on the discussion, and it actually stemmed from committee. So, as part of the construction, this is a local group that brings it forward. I want to understand the risk and securities that we have onto the city. We talked last time about the cash in lieu portion, which wouldn't cover the full amount, but when there is development, we require securities. In this case, obviously, it's for parkland, it's from community efforts, but what if the efforts become too big and the group can't pull it off? What is the financial risk onto the city?
Mr. Mayor, first of all, this is a volunteer group, and so most of the work and the effort that's going into this is either volunteer labor or sponsors that support this. What we're talking about essentially is to build a track and jumps out of dirt. So the risk will be that we could, should their efforts volunteers peter out, or for some reason that we are left with either an incomplete or an abandoned pile of dirt. But as we've mentioned, this group has a long-standing strong operational presence in the city, has a good base of volunteers. We will be monitoring every step of the way. So we would not be looking at a performance bond or securities of that type from a volunteer group, but we would be watching closely as the project progresses, and if there's any indication that things have gone awry, then we would address that to mitigate any impact on the city. But ultimately, what the remediation here would be to flatten everything out and reseed it so that it returns to a grass field.
Thank you.
Right, and I believe our last speaker is the Chair of Transportation, Councillor Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question and a comment. I'm curious as to when the city first looked at the issues of species at risk in this location. Was that looked at before you came to CPS, or was it in reaction to emails and concerns raised by the community since CPS?
Mr. Mayor, we have known about the species at risk and the environmentally sensitive area for some time. This is not the first proposal to come to the city for Carlington Park. There has been, over the years, several attempts at different commercial and non-commercial, a water slide, a winter tubing operation, those kinds of things. And we have always steered away from any development in that part. It is separately designated on the east side of the park. We are aware that it needs to be protected, and you know, from day one, we made that obvious to the mountain biking folks that there were limitations on what could be done there.
Sorry, you said, I just want to clarify, you said you've always steered away from any kind of development in that park?
Well, certainly in previous proposals, we have never considered putting any active development in that part of the park. It is the Carlington Woods. It is a treed area, and by and large has not been the interest. What has been of interest is the open hill and the top plateau for the most part. The east side of the park, which is the wooded area, generally has not figured prominently in anybody's proposal. Now, in this case, there was a last phase that looked at potentially putting something through that area down towards the residential area, but that was always looked at as, you know, a future phase that would really have to be looked at with the environmental considerations in mind.
Okay, thank you for that. So I won't be supporting this. I didn't support it at committee. I had some real concerns about the consultation process, and this is not a comment on whether there should be a bike facility there or not, nor on the efforts of staff. But we heard very clearly at committee that there were some real concerns around who was consulted, how they were consulted, who was allowed to vote from the community on the proposal, who wasn't allowed to vote. I've had an opportunity to speak to some community members between the CPS meeting and today. I've not been given any indication that any of those issues that were raised have been addressed in the interim by the community association or any other stakeholder in this group. So the same concerns that I had at the committee meeting around process and how we got here still concern me. They haven't been addressed. I know they still concern the community. I think we're being asked to sign off on something. I'm not sure how it got here, frankly. This is normally something I think would be dealt with locally, but it is in front of us. And being in front of us, I'm reluctant to sign off on something where we don't have all the details and where we also don't have, I think, a proper consultation process that was carried out whereby not just the community association, but everybody who lives in that area and adjoining community associations could be properly canvassed on the issues. So I will not be supporting this morning.
Okay, I thought we had our final Councillor Al Shantiri.
The final, Mr. Mayor. Just to my colleague around the table, as the rural area, we know we have quite a bit of trail, whether it's snowmobile trail or mountain bike. Just want you to know there's no way you can police those areas under any circumstances. So the best way to do, work with those organizations and be on a table and hold them accountable. And we saw from past experience, the best way to do, whether snowmobile trail through our forest or the mountain bike, is have them on a table and work with them, and they are policing it themselves. And they're staying on a trail, and we have a lot less damage today than we had 20 years ago in Turbolton Forest or in South March area because of the relationship we build with the clubs and the membership of those clubs. So I caution you, do nothing and leave it open like this. So then you are open it really to the illegal activities on it, and there's no way you can send me an email, say send the police over to watch a mountain biker on somewhere, please. Let's work with those groups and find a solution for it.
Okay, so we have the motion before us. On the motion as presented, carried. Dissent by Councillors Shirelli and Eglai. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Cloutier, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson, with respect to going in camera for a collective bargaining item. Councillor Cloutier, please.
Qu'il soit résolu de suspendre les règles.
May it be considered that we suspend the rules in order to allow the personnel to advise the municipality on the agreement of the renewal of the collective agreement, concluded with the Local 503 inside-outside of the Canadian Union of Public Employees.
On camera pursuant to Procedure Bylaw 2014-441, 13.1D, Labor Relations or Employee Negotiations, in subsection 13.1F, the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with respect to the tentative agreement reached for the renewal of the QP 503 collective agreement.
So on the motion, carried. So we'll now take a 5-minute recess before moving in camera. I'd ask that the room be cleared and that staff who do not need to be present, please leave the room as well. And please remember to bring all your belongings
Therefore, be it resolved that Council of the City of Ottawa support the construction and the operation of the project anywhere in the City of Ottawa. Therefore, be it resolved that the resolution sole purpose is unable supplier to achieve notice to proceed under their fit contracts and may not be used for a purpose of any other form of municipal approval in relation to a fit contract or project or of any other purpose, and be further resolved that this resolution should expire 12 months after this adoption by Council.
Great, thank you. So we'll deal with all four of those at our next meeting. We have another notice of motion from Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Hubley, on autonomous vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is about supporting our industry in the Ottawa area, which is working with autonomous and driverless cars. I don't know if council members are aware that QNX is in 90% of the world's cars. You don't see it because it's the ones that help you to drive more safely. I won't read all the whereases, Mr. Mayor. I just read the resolved yet, but the background, and council members have received this background that gives the idea of why we're doing this. So City Council directs staff to report back at Q2 2017 on the process of establishing in Ottawa a Centre of Excellence for Autonomous Vehicles, working in collaboration with Invest Ottawa, the Innovation Centre at Bayview, local post-secondary institutions, business partners such as QNX, the Province of Ontario, and the Government of Canada, with the objective of creating a national software hub for autonomous vehicles within the City of Ottawa. And secondly, that the City of Ottawa requests the Province of Ontario to cooperate with the City of Ottawa in approving testing of autonomous and driverless cars on public roads in Ottawa, commencing with those in the Canada North Business Park.
Great, thank you very much. We'll deal with that next meeting. Are there any other notices of motion at this time? Notice of intent from the Manotick Mill Quarter Community Development Corporation to hold the annual general meeting of the shareholder at the City Council meeting scheduled for October 12, 2016. Motion to introduce bylaws. Motion portant présentation de règlement.
Motion to introduce bylaws. Councillors Cloutier and Wilkins. The rules that presented to municipal bylaws there are presented. May we have a vote, please? So,
to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of September 28, 2016.
Carried.
Good man.
We have two written inquiries. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My inquiry is, I'd like to know what steps has the city taken and what plans do we have to prepare for the ongoing advancements in emerging and disruptive technologies in relation to the city's development of the transportation network and our land use. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And our second written inquiry is from Councillor Fleury, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm following up on the board chair at the Ottawa Police Board who brought the inquiry to the chief in terms of enforcement. This is specifically to city services. So based on concerns we have all heard from our communities regarding the recent influx of marijuana dispensaries, we'd like to know what steps is bylaw, building code, and planning department taking to shut down these illegal establishments? And follow up, what are other jurisdictions in Ontario doing to respond to this problem?
Okay, thank you. Adjournment, Councillor Cloutier, please.
I propose that the meeting of the 28th of September Council be adjourned, adopted.